All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. If you're just joining us, you're watching a Daybreak on Trust TV. We'll be diving right into our discussion segment where we'll be talking about the rising food prices in the market. And with the rising food prices in the market to the shrinking harvest on the farm, feeding Nigeria has become a bigger challenge every year. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization warns that over 25 million Nigerians are currently food insecure. Some experts say genetically modified crops, engineered to yield more and resist pests, could help us produce enough food for our growing population. Others believe they are a dangerous gamble that could harm our health, our environment, and our farmers' independence. Now, globally, genetically modified crops have been in use since the 1990s, promising high productivity and resilience to pests and droughts. Here in Nigeria, the debate became intense after the approval of genetically modified cotton in 2016 and BT maize in 2019. Now, the National Biotechnology Development Agency projects maize yields could rise by up to 30% with genetically modified technology. But environmental advocates warn about biodiversity loss, soil degradation, and over-reliance on multinational seed suppliers. This is more than a scientific debate, it's a question about our future. Can Nigeria afford to reject a technology that might boost food production, or is caution the wiser path when the long-term risks are still unclear? Now, our guest this morning is Dr. Jackie Ikeotuonye, a farmer, botanist, nutritionist, and natural health advocate. She is also the CEO of BFA Integrative Health and Wellness Clinic and serves as Vice President, North Central of African Women Entrepreneurship Program, with a Doctor of Medicine in Complementary and Alternative Medicine, leadership training from the Institute for National Transformation and the School of Policy, Politics and Governance, and years of experience in both agriculture and holistic health. She brings a unique blend of scientific knowledge and wellness expertise to this conversation. She'll help us unpack the science, the policy, and the human impact of genetically modified crops and explore whether they could be a lifeline for Nigeria's food security or a costly mistake for generations to come. You're highly welcome, Doctor. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here, and quite an impressive, profile, to be honest.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you, and good morning, everyone.
Yes. All right. We are talking about genetically modified crops here in Nigeria. We know a lot of countries have gone far beyond what we know here in Nigeria. The first question that usually comes into mind for every Nigerian is how healthy are genetically modified crops, due to the fact that there are lots of studies that say it does affect the human being, it does affect the system, and it changes the genetic makeup as well of the human being.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Nice being here today. Okay, we're so happy, about the awareness, coming up now. Everybody's asking questions. One of society's greatest tool of change is power of knowledge, and it's important that people are seeking to know what exactly is going on. How did we get to this point? Where are we? Because it's not enough for the regulators and the owners of these foods to tell us it is safe without giving us evidence. Because when you tell us it is safe, what we're asking for is, can you show us the research, the experiments you did that says they are safe? And when you ask these questions, they get offended, they get angry. And what that is doing is that it's now arousing more curiosity in people. Because if we're in a democratic setting, if you tell us that, okay, these things are safe, and people are asking questions, being a democratic society, the onus lies on you to tell us that they are safe. Okay, now I'm going to show you just one, so that we don't, because when somebody says my food is safe, my market is, the product I'm giving you, they are safe, and you have refused to make results or reports available, we will help you. Okay, now there was a research that was carried out in a very internationally acknowledged nutritional institute called Rowett Institute, okay, of nutrition. I'm just going to give you some of the findings carried out by the head scientists at Port Pottsy on the results carried out on GM potatoes. Just in brief, like these things are not rocket science, okay? Now, the results found out that rats which were fed GM potatoes suffered damaged immune system. Their white blood cells responded much more sluggishly than those fed a non-GM diet, making them more vulnerable to infections and disease. These are rats. And of course, in the lab, when we want to run experiments and all that, we use rats because of similarities with the human system. Now, other rats had enlarged tissues, including the pancreas and intestines. Some showed partial atrophy of the liver. Now, what was more significant is that structural changes and a proliferation of cells in the stomach and intestines of GM-fed rats may have signaled an increased potential for cancer. The rats developed these serious health effects after only 10 days. Some of these changes persisted after 110 days, a time period corresponding to about 10 years of human life. This is a research that says GM foods are not safe. They are not for human consumption. And that's where we are. But unfortunately, in the society we live in here in Nigeria, I don't want to bother myself with outside the country and all that. Let's deal with our own issues here. We are not a data-driven society, and that is very sad. Part of what we're asking the regulatory agencies to do, you have been appointed to regulate the influx of GMOs into the country based on the Cartagena Protocol, which Nigeria is a signatory to. The regulatory agency, National Biosafety Management Agency, that is supposed to regulate GMOs in Nigeria, unfortunately and embarrassingly, is the same agency that is marketing GMOs in Nigeria. How do we trust you? Imagine a NAFDAC, for instance, coming to market a brand of paracetamol or a brand of you're going to drugs. Get drugs. You're going to get worried.
Yeah.
So it's not even making sense at all. And you see, that is where we said, for how long are we going to be taken for granted? Food is something that concerns everybody. It's not me alone. And if these people are not ready to, for instance, we have GMO maize, we have beans, we have at least the ones they have publicly said there is available, that they have approved commercially. But we know that GMO rice is in Nigeria. GMO potatoes are in Nigeria. GMO cassava is in Nigeria. I remember when we started talking about the GM beans, we were abused, we were harassed that nobody is bringing GMO beans into Nigeria. But we did our investigation and found out that as at the time we were talking about that GMO beans, they had started messing with the beans for over 10 years. And part of what we did, like when we had a training, and that was part of what pushed some of us into farming, because we realized that these people are not thinking straight, okay? We had a training with a group of people from the European Union in terms of, like teaching us about export, how to, the qualities, building up your capacity, to be able to export your food, or rather what you grow. And during that training, these consultants, they were very clear. I asked a question as a beans farmer about exports. If one of them answered categorically, your beans cannot come into EU. he said, apart from high pesticide use, you guys have started messing around with GMO beans. It wasn't public then. It wasn't commercialized. It was still in the experimental phase. So during some of the conversations we had with some of the biotech people, the agencies, we said, okay, you've been messing around doing your GMO beans for several years, doing field trials. And you see, I need to tell something. When they talk about field trials, you think it's a test tube. You think it's one plot of land. They use hectares of land. And we say, you have been doing these field trials for several years. Where are the harvests of these field trials? They're out there in the market. So what most Nigerians are not even aware, that before we commercially launched, or we launched, like publicly, the commercial release of the beans and all that, it's been out there in the market. So a whole lot of these health issues you're talking about, we see this every day. We know the kind of health challenges people are having on a daily basis. Diseases that never used to be like African, things that you think, influx of cancer, kidney problems, liver issues, a whole lot of them. You see young people that are married, like a young girl, supposedly a virgin, that never messed around, like they believe, oh, I kept my body and so on. Infertility. You see young men in their 20s, 30s, having erectile dysfunction. These are things unheard of years before. And remember, whether we like it or not, you are what you eat. What you put into your system determines what, the outcomes you're going to see in your health. So these foods have been with us. But you see, what we find a bit infuriating is the denials coming from the biotech agencies, the regulatory agencies. The latest one, some months back, the NAFDAC professor told us that GMOs are not safe for human consumption. We said, okay, let them, we have something to work on. Only for us to wake up some days back, she came up on TV again to tell us that they are safe for human consumption. Okay, no problem. We are good. Can you show us? These things should be in the public domain. It shouldn't be inside somebody's room or inside somebody's office. And you tell us about trade secrets, things that has to do with our food. So that's the sad situation of where we are now as a people. Whether we like it or not, GMO foods are here in Nigeria.
All right. Okay, go ahead. I had a follow-up question.
Please go ahead.
All right, Dr. Jackie, you spoke about, the testing that had going on. You are a farmer at this particular moment. How do you think that would affect the food output that we would have in Nigeria? And aside from that, how would it affect especially soil degradation and everything in between that would affect productivity when it comes to food? We have food insecurity in Nigeria, and bringing in those grains for agriculture to plant them would enhance having more GM crops in Nigeria. How do you think that would affect the food insecurity itself? And aside from the health, as you mentioned, farming in itself in Nigeria as well, with affecting soil degradation?
There are a whole lot of, like I said, lies that we call them biotech rhetorics that we've been told. Part of what we were told then, when we started digging into this, they said, oh, GMO foods will end hunger. They are trying to feed the world. Africans are dying of hunger. It will protect the environment. It will give greater yields. I remember during President Jonathan's regime, when he signed the biosafety law, that was I think in 2015 or thereabouts, we were told that farmers will become billionaires, in dollars, and everybody was happy and clapping. This is 2025, about 10 years. I don't know how many farmers that are billionaires, I don't see how it has improved yields, because the reality which we have seen, GMO foods, their nutrient content is lower than like their counterparts, in natural foods or organically grown foods. For instance, let me give you an example. Soya bean that everybody eats. Sadly, all the soya bean, at least most 90% of the soya bean that comes from US that we import and all that, is already genetically modified. Now, we have found out the vitamin E, for example, I'm using this as an example, okay? Vitamin E, that's a very powerful antioxidant that helps in reducing cancers, especially in women. Most of the vitamin C you see out there in the market has the soybean oil inside. You see that gel, whatever. And that oil has been sent to the lab and found out that it helps promote the growth of tumors in women. How many people are aware of this? And we are consuming this. Because you see people, they come, they are telling you, oh, I'm taking vitamin E, I'm taking this one. And I said, no. The vitamin E you're taking, you're actually helping your body produce more tumors. We've now found out, these are lab tested. You know, these are things we do. It's not like hearsay. These are things I do. We now found out that the vitamin E, you know, it has 4 major nutrients, the tocopherols and tocotrienols. A lot of the vitamin C you see out there don't contain this. Either they are vitamin E acetate, and which I tell people to avoid and run away from. The vitamin E that the body absorbs that actually helps, you know, with the antioxidant system in the body is either a powder in a capsule or a loose powder.
Not the oil,
that one that
gel,
contains that oil, take it to the lab. You know, some of these things, when you say it, thank God for technology. You can go and get one, send it to a lab. If it comes, because you know they are written there on the body now, if it's made of soy oil, except it's soy that's coming from maybe Russia or Japan or, you know, some of those EU countries where genetic modification is not allowed. That oil, if it is soy oil from the countries that produce, it contains that gel contains soy oil
that has been
genetically modified, and it promotes the growth of tumors. So you can see why people are still taking these antioxidants and still having cancers.
All right.
So we are, you know, so in terms of food security, that's not our problem. It's not genetic modification that is going to give us the food security that we need. As a farmer, okay, Nigeria, we can feed ourselves. What the farmers need, first of all, number one, security. I've had a farm, you know, where we planted maize. In fact, I actually did a video of it from where I was. I didn't want to go near because I didn't want to be a victim of anything, you know. We saw people carrying cattle into that farmland, and they were having a field day on our maize. When we went and told the DPO, he said, Madam, just leave them all. Do you understand? So the major problem our farmers are facing is security. It's not that we can't grow our foods. Look at all the places where they're having the crisis, where the farmers are located, Benue, Plateau, and all that, killing off a lot of farmers. How will you not have food insecurity? And you now tell us that, oh, that is when you now bring genetic modification, that's when we're going to have, no, it doesn't work that way. So what government needs to do, you know, when you talk about our food security now, we need security in the farms. Protect farmers, provide them with access to roads, access, you know, infrastructure. Make the same way they are pushing GMOs. Also push, there are organic inputs, there are organic pesticides. We don't need to depend, you know, they should try and make this thing in such a way that people should have a choice. Like if you don't want to eat their GMO, you can now, just like it's done overseas, you can walk into a shop and say, okay, let me take organic or non-GMO, okay? And of course, make it affordable. Because if the people planting, I know how much it costs us to grow the beans we're growing because we are using organic inputs and all that. So if people can have the same support that the GMO stuff and people are having, we will have enough food. And people should be able to make a choice, because even if when you travel abroad, you find out that GMO foods are very cheap and affordable. You understand? Because the people powering these things are very wealthy and they are very, you know, powerful, in quotes, you know what I mean.
So, Dr. Jackie, you're a farmer, you know, you're a nutritionist, you're a botanist, and you have made lots of research because you speak with so much fact and confidence as to, you know, the results that you have, you know, gotten over time that you have done this experiment. So really, for farmers that want to go into, you know, the GM farming, what is the first thing you would tell them to be careful of?
You know, part of what we encourage these farmers, because I have planted GM corn. I have planted GM beans. The GM corn, first harvest, just on a small scale, because some of these things, it's not enough to just talk. You know, go out there and experiment yourself. That first harvest will look okay. When you want to replant the seeds, it will give you beautiful leaves. You will not see one corn on it. So what that tells you, in fact, a friend of mine even did with beans. Beautiful leaves, no beans. Now, what that tells you is that, like we have been told, you're supposed to be buying the seeds every planting season.
So you cannot plant what you've already harvested?
No, you can't.
It doesn't regenerate?
No, they are modified not to reproduce.
Oh, wow.
The seeds are modified not to reproduce. So that's a very big challenge for farmers. Because you see, right now, you know, they said it's being given through humanitarian aid. So they have not started buying, per se, you understand? But over time, just like in a lot of countries, you know, by the time they start putting farmers in a database, over time, and when I say over time, these people are very patient. You can wait 10, 15 years. When you plant corn in your field and you didn't buy, they will wonder, where did you get it from? It has happened in several countries. They have sued so many farmers because, I mean, like, because these seeds are patented. And you ask yourself, who are the owners of this patent? How do you leave your food system in the hands of just about 4 to 5, 6 companies? How? Who does that? So in Nigeria, you cannot even like grow your corn or your beans without having to buy it from those from the owners of these seeds. So that's like selling your food sovereignty, carry your food sovereignty and put it in the hands of foreigners, because no Nigerian owns these seeds. It doesn't belong to Nigerians. It belongs to Monsanto and all the Bayer now, you know, all the other companies. So I don't even understand how we reason. It's not even making sense. Oh, you know, in decades, centuries back, farmers grow their crop, select seeds and save for the next planting season.
Yeah.
But now they are discouraging it, giving us 1,001 reasons. This pest is doing this one. This pest is not doing this one. And I tell them, I say, see, whether we take it or leave it. You know, when you say these things, they tell you, oh, it's conspiracy theory and all that and all that. But the reality is that, for instance, the beans, the pests that came and wiped off our beans, where did it come from? So whether they like it or not, what most of us have, who said we're beginning to believe that somebody sends in this pest, it affects all the crops. Then they now tell you, oh, it's the genetic modification that will save that particular crop. Now we have entered into ginger. You said offered to help us improve our ginger. And a lot of people accepted the improved ginger. And today, you can see the battle we're having with ginger.
Yes.
Now Nigeria is importing ginger. Isn't that an embarrassment?
It is.
So we need to, like, you know, there's a lot of farmer awareness, farmer education going on. Because I said to them, well, those of you who are still ready to sell your birthrights, sell your souls, because, I mean, you're being given aid. Over time, we begin to see the effect of this thing. It's not something that is new to Nigeria alone. Because questions we are asking, why are a lot of nations rejecting these GMOs? Waiting with the time. What did we see? What are we looking for? You know, that we are not asking questions. In a place like Russia, they see GMOs as bioweapons. If you bring it in here, you're a terrorist. So we need to have these conversations. And as we're having these conversations, it's not about, I remember the last interview I had, and after that interview, some people, you know, normally they have their paid agents, you know, anonymously. They will attack you, abuse your grandfather, abuse your grandmother. It doesn't mean anything to us. Because the truth is this, if what you're selling is good, if your product is good, I've never seen a staff of Bayer/Monsanto come up on TV to tell us about the food they are selling to us. In detail. In detail. You are the owners of these products. Rather, when I finish speaking now, they might request for a right of reply. And you know who is going to come and do the right of reply? Either the DG of the agency that's supposed to protect you and I. It doesn't make sense. Let Monsanto, the owner of the food, or Bayer now, because there was a merger, so they answer Bayer now. They should come on air and sit down and say, okay, Nigerians, we are giving you this food, and this is what it contains with evidence. But as long as we have the regulators being the one marketing what they are supposed to regulate, there's a problem. Then you talk about labeling. Look at our society. I love my country where, like Nigeria, we're happy people. Before, you could just walk into the market, buy your beans and all that and eat. But that's not the situation anymore. With GMO beans, labeling, how do they label? Label is part of what we're asking for. So you now ask me, you enter Otako market, you see the way they sell things in the open. Who is going to put label GMO, non-GMO? How many people will do that? Let's not even talk about the people selling by the roadside. If you go to construction sites, one of the foods that every construction worker eats, beans. So who is going to label all that? So you stepped into a system and you decide that these people, let's just flood the market with GMO foods so that by the time everywhere is saturated with the GMO foods, it's too late. There is really nothing they can do about it. But we know that something can be done. Right. Because you see, the reality is that with an executive order, we can put these things on hold so that we can get more information on what it is that we're eating.
All right. Dr. Jackie, to be honest, I wish there was more time, but they're calling on us. It is time to go for a break. But it was an absolute pleasure, and we absolutely learned a lot. And hopefully we'll have you back here, to elaborate more on what we need to know as Nigerians, as farmers, and what the government needs to do as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Jackie.
Thank you so much for coming.
It's my pleasure being here.